McCown Gordon Construction opened its Manhattan office in 2014, responding to business growth and client demand. The team is focused on engaging with communities in Manhattan and throughout the state of Kansas to bring projects to life. They are here to be your partner and view every project through a customer-centric, future-focused lens. Learn more at McCownGordon.com. Hello and welcome to the ThinkMHK Podcast presented by the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce. On this podcast, you will hear about a variety of local matters pertaining to the business community. You also hear from local business owners to hear their story and gain valuable business insights. Thanks for tuning in today. My co-host for this segment is Charla Meisenheimer. Hey, Charla.
Hey, Jason.
We have a great guest with us today. And I know I always say that all our guests are great, and they are. But today I'm really excited because we have Kerri Winter from Florence Manufacturing. Hey, Kerri.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And Kerri also is the chair of your Women in Business Committee.
Right, which is why I'm super excited that she's here.
And we had a big Women in Business event this week.
We did, and a resolution rendezvous was last night, and we had over 50 women there to set their business resolutions for the year. And the cool thing, I think, and Kerri was there, so she can certainly tell too, but JNC Imaging comes and captures their resolution for the year in a black and white photo that they get for to remind themselves the whole year. So it's cool.
Well, we'll get to that in just a minute. Let's don't jump ahead of ourselves.
Oh, it's so exciting.
I did ask the question.
I know.
Kerri was also on the committee that hired me. So she was on the selection committee.
I was.
And was
she
was on the board at that particular moment. And so I'm very happy to have her here. I would like you to start. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up in Manhattan.
Well, I am a Kansas native. I grew up in a small town north of Manhattan in Washington County, so not too far away. Graduated from Bethany College in Lindsborg, Kansas, and my husband and I decided after that we were going to move around for a little while, experience different places, and we did. And then we decided we had a daughter who was in 6th grade, our oldest at the time, and we were in Kansas City. And we were talking about where do we want our daughter to go to middle school and high school, kind of the important years in their development and stuff. So as we were talking about it, we decided we wanted our children to have some of the small town values that both he and I grew up with, and decided to look in this area. And luckily, we both found jobs close to Manhattan, and we moved here, and that was back in 2004. So it's been a while now.
Wow, you're nearly 2 decades in.
Can you believe it? I can't. It's blown by.
Yeah, it always does, right? A lot of people don't know what Florence is or where they are. And so I'll have people sometimes say, where's that? And I'll say, when you land at the airport, that great big building that's out by the airport, that's Florence Manufacturing. They go, oh, what do they do out there? So talk about what Florence Manufacturing does, and then talk about your role in the company, because I know that recently changed.
It pains me because I get that question too when I talk about where I work, and I work at Florence Manufacturing, and people say, who's Florence Manufacturing? And, considering, so for me, I've been there since 2005. So, and Florence has been here since 2003. So for some time. And so I always say, we're the mailbox manufacturer. Now people start to listen. They're like, oh, I do know a little bit about, that we had a mailbox manufacturer here. So Florence, we make the centralized mailbox units, which it's made of aluminum. They're the ones that are in, new housing developments, apartment buildings, businesses, places like that. It's not the single delivery point mailboxes. Although we do have, Florence is part of a large public company. It's Gibraltar Industries. Their headquarters is in Buffalo, New York, and it's $1 billion company. And they have a group of companies that they now put together, and we're part of a group called Mail and Package. And that group has 2 companies that make the single delivery mailboxes, and then they also have a company that makes electronic parcel or package lockers, which is actually made here at Florence too. We sell and distribute all over the United States.
Now, are those called cluster mailboxes?
They are, and my kids give me a hard time about this because they are called, we call them in CBUs, which are cluster box units. And so every time we travel, I'm always pointing them out, to my kids, like, hey, that's a CBU. And they're like, Mom, what is a CBU? But it is, I'm impressed, Jason, that you knew it was the cluster
Stacey
box.
maybe told me that. Stacey Kohlmeyer, of course, who's also on the exec committee of the chamber and works at Florence. So I think she's the one that told me that.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
My kids don't like to hear about my job either. So I
know.
don't feel
offended by the fact that they don't like to hear about my job. I know. Or sometimes I'll take pictures because I'm like, oh, we need to change that or, fix that. So we do that too. But so my role with Florence is part of the group. I'm the vice president general manager for the business. And like I said, I've been with the business since 2005, but I've had different roles in the company. In the past, I've been mostly on the financial side of the business. But as of January 1, I was promoted to vice president general manager. So that's kind of what I do.
So what are some of the positive elements and then the challenges of doing business in Manhattan for a manufacturer?
One of the things that's really attractive in Manhattan is that we have a workforce that's a really hardworking, dedicated workforce. You can tell how much they care about the people they work with and how they care about us as a company as well. And, one of the examples of that, and it's just been amazing to me, as we've went through COVID, you hear about all of the dedication that workers have had, whether it's healthcare workers or, doctors, teachers, and we do have dedicated workers. But in manufacturing, from the day COVID started, we've remained open as a manufacturer, and our workers have shown up every day. Now, we have some employees are remote, but in production, you can't manufacture, without our employees, and they have stuck it out. And we've introduced a lot of changes to them too. I mean, we've had to change shift times so that we didn't have everybody clocking in at the same time. So we had to spread those times out and impact how the times they come to work and when they leave. And, we have longer hours because the demand, when everyone started staying at home, people started buying mailboxes. And because they had time to install a mailbox. It's like other residential products, right? We're going to renovate, we're going to do, do it yourself kind of things. And mailbox was part of that. And so our demand increased and our employees had to work more, but they did. And I think that just speaks to, the workforce that we have in this area. We also have, Kansas State. And I was talking earlier about an open, with each of you about open positions that we have. And when we have the opportunity with Kansas State being in our community to hire individuals who are more technically trained or, have higher technical training, and we have jobs in our business that require higher technically trained skills. So having K-State in our area is really helpful to our business too. As far as the challenges, we had this challenge before COVID, but it's worse now, and it's really workforce availability. We have other challenges too, but I would say that's the number one issue that we face. As our business has grown and demand has increased, we have more opportunities we have more jobs, and it's been hard to really fill those open positions.
And we hear that from a number of businesses, and I'm certainly not making light of it. And it's why we have dedicated roughly now about 25 to 30% of our economic development resources on attracting and retaining people, because we understand that those go hand in hand with jobs. And so, but it's a challenge certainly across Kansas, but I think really globally now. It just seems to be
we are not alone.
Challenge. So about supply chain, have you had some challenges with supply chain through the pandemic, and is it getting better? Is it kind of staying the same? What's that been like?
The supply chain has definitely been challenged. I mean, there's been times when, we've had interruption in production because of it. The supply chain challenges are both in supply and then also in input cost. Most of our mailboxes are made out of aluminum, some steel, and commodities have been just, crazy in terms of and unpredictable, and that's been hard too. But some of those issues are getting better. I think the supply chain issues are improving. Some of the input costs are still not, but I think they will settle down here as we get further into 2022.
So big picture, why is manufacturing important to a community?
One of the things I would say is manufacturing jobs are important because they provide, jobs to hardworking, the middle skilled workers that have upward mobility. In Manhattan, we employ 250 full-time employees. I think sometimes people are surprised by that too. Like, you have this mailbox company, and what does it, what does it do? And we have 250 jobs, in our organization, and we have temp workers as well. And when you look at some of the jobs, it's also a broad range of jobs. We have accounting, finance, operations, supply chain. We talked about that. We have engineers, whether it's mechanical design, who design our products, or manufacturing engineers, industrial engineers. And how many businesses in our community provide all of those different types of jobs, right here in our community. So that's part of manufacturing. It's part of what we do, and that's important to our community.
Yeah, and I think we have to be real careful not to pigeonhole ourselves into we only have these kinds of businesses, because as you go back to the labor situation, right now we are challenged for healthcare workers. Well, you may be trying to attract a particular healthcare worker, but their spouse has a job in manufacturing. And there's a lot of reasons why you need to make sure that your economy is diversified, and we're pretty reliant on technology and government and those kind of jobs. And I think having a well-rounded economic landscape, I think, is better overall for all of us.
Oh, and I think, and that was going to be the other part of it for manufacturing. I think it's critical that in our community that we have that diverse mix. As we face different, economic situations, what happens at the university might be different than what happens at Fort Riley versus what happens in our, manufacturing companies. And, but to have that diverse mix of businesses will help us. Our tax base is different too, based on, our different industries. So, I think it's critical to have that diverse mix.
What did you all decide to get involved and continue your involvement in the chamber?
We talked about workforce availability and, the challenges that we have there. And Jason, you mentioned that's, obviously a part, I think you said, 25-30% of our investment going forward is going to help with that. That's one of our biggest challenges, and that's what we need help with. The other thing the chamber does is the chamber is here to help us have a community where people want, create a community where we want to work and live. And if we want to attract the workforce that we need, we have to have a community that thrives in that area. That's what the chamber is about. Being a part of the chamber for us just helps us do business better.
We talked just briefly about this as we started. You were an instrumental part of beginning the Women in Business program that we have at the chamber. Why was that important to you to get that started?
The first reason is I have 2 daughters of my own. I'm always talking to them about, setting the example, going for your dreams, don't stop, don't let anything limit you. And realizing that you can make a difference. And, Women in Business, that's what we try to do too, is, help inspire other women to, make a difference in their business and in our communities. And so I definitely want to do it for that reason. I think also, getting involved in Women in Business, I love to talk about business. We haven't talked about business a lot here today. We talked a little bit about what Florence does in Gibraltar and stuff, but I love to talk about business. I love listening to others talk about business. When we get a chance to be in Women in Business and listen to others talk about other industries, that helps me too in the industry that I'm in, even if it's different, because we can learn from each other. And it's just an environment where we have an opportunity to talk business and how can we learn and grow together.
I love that you are my chair for that, so it helps us, go forward with that in that area. So why do you feel that Women in Business is important to Manhattan overall?
It's a forum where we get a chance to, like I mentioned, talk about business, but also to support each other. Last night was kind of a great example of how we can support each other in our goals as we try to develop and grow as leaders. I was, sat around a table with a number of women who were talking about what their word was and why they chose that word, and then we talked about how we had these pictures taken of our word. And I hope that each of us, by the word we choose, will be able to act differently, throughout this year and remind ourselves and each other of that.
Right.
And hold ourselves accountable to, going after it, whatever that happened to be.
It was a great evening, great event.
It was. What was your word, Charlotte?
It was forgive.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
That's actually probably good news for me. because
There you go.
because Charlotte has to forgive me a lot.
I do not.
So talk a little bit about that, because we touched on it briefly at the beginning, but talk about Resolution Rendezvous and what exactly that is, and if somebody, obviously we just had it, but somebody wants to get involved, we have it every January, so maybe talk about that.
So it started about 4 years ago, and we sat down and said, as women, a lot of times we have a tendency, and I think everyone does, but I think women have a tendency to pigeonhole their January resolutions into, I'm gonna lose weight. I'm going to walk. I'm going to be a better mom. I'm going to cook dinner with organic food every night. Things that last a couple of days in our world. It looks good on paper type of a thing. I mean, I don't know. But we never really stop and go, what's my business resolution? And not a resolution that's based on what someone else wants for us, but what do I want to accomplish in my business this next year? How do I want to look a year from now? And that was kind of the challenge last night, was when you come through the door next year, who is that woman going to be? And how do we go for that? So for me, it was, my word was forgive. So part of that is just forgiving myself for some mistakes that I make, forgiving different things that happen around, but just that forgiveness is okay, for a lot of different areas. What was your word?
My word was courageous.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And where'd that come from?
And, for me, it came from, I recently accepted the, opportunity to be Vice President General Manager for, the Mail and Package Group. And it's not always easy, right? When you're in charge. And so I think I'm going to need to have a certain amount of courage and be courageous this year for that.
Well, I can't wait to hear you.
How about
roar.
talking about like this today? I mean, speaking on a podcast isn't my favorite thing to do, right? So it was a good word for this too.
And we appreciate you doing that.
What do you think is the biggest misnomer about women in business?
I think some people think that women in business is a time for women just to sit around and talk, but and we certainly need time for that. And there's networking that's involved. Right. But for me, it's more than that. Every time I walk away from a women in business event, whether it's, we have panel discussions with, about finances. That was one of our panels this year, right? Where we talked about
what's the stock market?
Yeah. What is the stock market? What does it mean to us? What should we be doing as young professionals? How should we be thinking about what we should invest in, what we shouldn't? How do we make sure that, we're building for whatever our future is, and that we as women are participating in that. Mm-hmm. And, panel discussions like that are, I think every person in the room took away something from that discussion. Sometimes we'll have inspirational speakers in, that just talk to us. We talked about health. We had a, kind of
bringing health back to the workplace.
Yes. And that's been important. With COVID, we've had so much isolation and things like that. I think that was a great discussion. So it's more than women, sitting around and talking. It's taking something away to make us better leaders, better community members, and just better moms.
Right. Yeah. Better community people too.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think I agree with you, Kerri, on all of those fronts. I think the biggest thing that people sometimes think is that it's an us versus them. It never has been, never will be, we never wanted it to be. It was never, ever that. And it really is about making a network of women who can support each other and have those opportunities. We just launched for 2022 our lunch bunches.
Yes.
So that's really exciting. So those started a couple of years ago, where we just put a group of people that don't really know each other together. There's 10 to 12 in a bunch, and their role is they get together once a month for lunch and just get to know somebody different in a different environment. And what we've learned is that mentorships have come out of that, and great opportunities to say, hey, I've got a problem and I need some advice on how I would do that. And I think that has proven to be very successful for us.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Well, I know we talk a lot in the chamber world about volunteers and time, talent, and treasure. I think sometimes we forget that time and talent are as important, if not more important, than the finance side of it. And so we appreciate you coming in, because we know you're very busy in your career, and that coming in and leading this program, because we think it's really important to our future. We have to get a lot more diverse in our membership. And so being able to create programming for a diverse set of individuals is important. And thank you for leading that for us.
And I appreciate being a part of it. So thank you for
So now is the fun part. When we do our member spotlights, we do rapid fire questions. And Charla, I believe, has the list for today.
I'll do my best.
What are the 3 things you can't live without?
Faith, family, fun. Do I have to explain any of these or just rapid fire answers?
They're rapid fire answers. If you want to explain them, you can, but not necessarily.
I'm going with those 3.
Best piece of advice you ever received?
I've been around a lot of great people, so I've had a lot of good examples, but I'm going to go with a simple one, which is always be yourself, no matter where you are or what you do. Don't forget who you are and just be yourself.
Great advice. Favorite holiday?
Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I have a very large family and we have a lot of traditions at Christmas. And so it's just a great time to carry forward those traditions, and it's one of my favorites.
How large is large?
Well, depends on how far out you go from my brothers and sisters. So I have 3 sisters and a brother on my side of the family, but both my parents had large families too. So when we have a get together at Christmas, our Christmas Eve, there's at least 50 of us.
Wow.
And we do a white elephant gift with 50 people. You know how long that takes?
Yes, a long time.
A long time.
You ring in the new year easily of that, couldn't you?
Yeah, by the time we get done. That's right. Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give the 19-year-old you?
I would say don't take life too seriously. You have plenty of time for that. And just take the opportunity to, I try to tell my daughter, my youngest, this right now. She's actually going to be 19 in a couple of weeks.
That's crazy.
Learn as much as you can from the people around you, no matter, how old, right? I have to remind her of that sometimes. But just learn as much as you can so you can take those nuggets of things that you learn and just be who you want to be.
Favorite flavor of ice cream?
Definitely Reese's Peanut Butter Cup in vanilla ice cream.
Ooh.
It's my go-to every time.
That is my youngest stepson's favorite.
Is it really?
Oh, yeah. Anytime we go to the store, he tries to get us to buy some.
Best childhood memory?
All right. This might surprise some people, but for me, it was, so I mentioned I grew up on a farm, and for me, it was feeding cows with my dad.
Aww.
It was.
That's
because
awesome.
we used to play this. I don't know how many people have done this, but well, you certainly do on vacation. On vacation, you go, "Are we there yet?" And so when we would go feed the cattle with my dad, I have an identical twin sister, so we'd be in the truck to get. You didn't?
No.
Yeah, something you didn't know about me. And so watch out because we do look alike. But no, so we'd play, "When are we there yet?" And we'd close our eyes and we'd be, heading to the feedlot, and he would try to we'd have our eyes closed and he would tease us, "Are we there?" And he would turn and he would push on his brakes and he would, do different things, and we'd have to guess if we were there at the feedlot. But it was a quality time. That was the most important part. I think that I appreciate today is just that quality time together.
So just so we're aware, your twin sister lives in
Topeka.
Topeka. So if we're in Topeka and we think we see you.
Yes, that's right. Please,
be careful.
Please forgive me if I don't acknowledge you.
Be careful not to just go and go, "Hey, how's it going?"
And people do that all the time. And then sometimes she'll have to call and say, I ran into someone that knows you today, but they didn't tell me your name, but here's what they look like brown hair. I'm like, that's not helpful. You have to be more specific.
Biggest lesson the pandemic taught you?
Just make the best of what you have and don't take anything for granted. Look at how many challenges so many people faced during the pandemic. I've definitely learned to be more flexible and adjust.
Who is someone you look up to?
Again, a lot of people I could name, but I am going to say my dad. Because I grew up on the farm. He was a hardworking guy, taught us how to work hard and just be committed to, whatever you do. And even if we were down and he had a, long day, which he had a lot of long days, he was there to pick us up. And I would say, yeah, by far, he's
your guy.
The one. Mm-hmm.
He's it. Texting or talking?
Talking. I do have to text today, but I will definitely go for talking.
Favorite business book?
For me, it was Leadership and Self-Deception. Have you read it?
No.
Oh, Charla, you need to read this.
Should it be our next Women in Business book?
Yes.
Maybe.
That's a good thought. Yeah.
Okay,
well, we'll check it out. It's by the Arbinger Institute, is who I know, not like this, most popular author that you would see. But you know what I liked about it is because when you talk about leadership and self-deception, so many times I think there's things going on around me. And I think, it's, someone else is causing me to think this way, or someone else is causing me to act this way. But what the leadership and self-deception is you're deceiving yourself if you think that it's, always someone else. Most of the time it's you. It's how I'm reacting to the situation. And the book, shows you to think differently about that. And it talks about how you have to get out of your box, that we have these walls around us and this is how we think, and get outside of the box and look in. You'll figure out how to change, to work better with people, and and it helps you personally too. So it's a good combination.
I'll have to look that up.
Check it out.
Well, Kerri, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
Look forward to a year of Women in Business.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
The ThinkMHK Podcast is brought to you by the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce. Don't forget to subscribe and like the ThinkMHK Podcast on your preferred podcast provider, and you will never risk missing an episode. If you enjoyed our show, please give us a 5-star rating and leave a review. To find out more about today's topic or other chamber activities, please go to manhattan.org. And now back to today's show. I'm going to ask our producer, Dave Lewis, to hop on mic. Hey, Dave.
Hey, glad to be on here.
So we are wrapping up season 1. This is technically our 21st episode, and I thought it went really well.
I learned so much. I mean, if you go back and listen to every podcast, you're going to pick up something, especially some of the personal aspects. You know, I love the rapid fire questions that you do with some of our guests, some of the members. And, you know, you learn more about the personality, but, you know, you learn so much about the inner workings of what the chamber does. And I find it extremely informational.
And that's what we try to do. And we want people to get to know our members. I think a lot of times people see the chamber as a faceless organization and not realize the chamber is actually
I think it's the other way around.
Of 800 members, right?
Yeah, I think it's the other way around. When I go to a chamber event, I'm not necessarily there because it's a chamber event. I'm there because it's a people event. And you know, same with going to the annual meeting the other night with the banquet. You know, it's just so great to see so many people, especially after what we've been challenged with here over the last couple of years. So I equate faces to the chamber in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and that's what we want to try to do. So we decided to do this podcast, and of course I said we got to call my good friend Dave Lewis. But you have created a new studio, the Ad Astrocast Studios.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about what you're doing here and opportunities for people who might want to get involved in podcasting.
You know, when I first started getting into the idea of doing podcasting, and I bought the equipment over 2 years ago. Well over 2 years ago, and this is before the pandemic. So I was already eyeing in mind doing some podcasting and doing some other things. And my interest at the time was to do mostly some, you know, locally based historical people that I found to be, you know, fascinating stories. And then with the pandemic, everything just kind of got put on hold, and, you know, we're just trying to sift through, and I utilized some of the equipment during that time to do virtual events for a number of organizations, including some chamber stuff. We did, you know, a number of fundraisers for some nonprofits. There was the Flint Hills Leadership Class introduction came through as one of those events. And then as things started lightening up, started talking with Vern Hendricks of the Greater Manhattan Community Foundation. And Vern and I go way back and do a lot of things, and he started expressing interest in doing a podcast that we could spotlight some of the nonprofit agencies, but also some of the people that are involved in the Greater Manhattan Community Foundation as trustees, as members of the board, maybe some of those who are very charitable. And, you know, when I started looking at this concept, and for me, the podcast business model that I've created is more of a podcast contractor. And I have several customers, including you and the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce, that contract with me to help maybe host or produce and post podcasts. And I have several clients. I started one now with Senator Tom Hawk. We have Senator Hawk Talk. We have one that's just getting ready to launch on suicide awareness. And this is coming from some grant monies from a number of organizations. And I'm working with Lori Bishop as the lead on this. And I think that this has the opportunity to be really, really helpful, because podcasts, you know, you can target a specific audience with your content like no other medium and still be able to probably get as much, if not more, than other types of media. And I just find this truly fascinating that it is so extremely open and well-rounded to be able to continue to, you know, build podcasts for businesses, any kind of organization, for special interests. I still want to do some of the historical stuff. I want to do some travel stuff. And, you know, so we still have some interesting possibilities ahead.
Going back to the ThinkMHK podcast, which is our podcast, and we appreciate you producing that for us. What are some of the things highlights of the year that you can remember?
I like the rapid fire stuff. I think that's one of the things I get a kick out of most, because, you know, it's, you know, and your guests come in with knowledge of what those questions are going to be, but still to hear their responses, it's just, everybody is so different. in that. And I think that that's charming in a lot of respects. I've learned from a lot of people what really makes them tick. And there's a few guests that really kind of come to mind. I remember distinctly when Wayne Sloan came in. And one of the questions was something that you feel like you absolutely must do. And his answer shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. And his answer was tithe. And I know you remember that because you were the one that was interviewing him. And that's so Wayne. A lot of people think that faith-based aspect is something that is, I think many of us look at from a very private perspective, but it also molds who we are as people. And that explains an awful lot about Wayne and his and the work that he does, outside of his construction company. Matt Crocker totally blew me away talking about financial matters. Sarah Siders is just a real treat to have her in. Bobby French, what an entrepreneur she has become, and just someone who has, really become a highly adored influencer.
And roller derby person.
Yeah.
Who knew that?
And that's one of the other things, just kind of like, where did that come from? We don't see that out of her. Mark Bashamp and I go back a long ways, and it was great to have him in there. And I think one of the things about Mark was that I just really had a great amount of respect and appreciation for his vision, and he had a real progressive perspective on where he wanted to see the chamber's efforts to go while he was in the chamber chair's position. Mike Madsen is always fun to listen to. Tara Grubb, who's another one who's just, she just won the award for Young Business Professional. And she just really is engaged with Hype and what she's done there. Just some great leadership. And I think that that's one of the things that I took away most is the quality and the quantity of great leaders in our community that we've had here.
From my standpoint, all the ones you talked about, I think were great. There were some people who I thought I knew that I didn't know. Ron Fear's one that I work with all the time. I had no idea some of the things around him going to work for the city of Manhattan. I thought that was interesting. I really enjoyed, and this is just a little bit, I think, my personal things that I like to talk about. Dick Carter was a great show and got a chance to talk about policy and some of the things going on at the state. And then on a personal standpoint of just people I think that were the easiest to interview, the Manhattan Brewing Company guys. I thought they were hysterical, and that interview went so easy, and it was so much fun to do that I really enjoyed it. I do want to take this opportunity, and we have 3 co-hosts that are with me in every segment, and that's our directors, and it's Charla, Darren, and Karen, who most people know in the community. But 2 people that you may not know really did all the hard work on this project. Dina Huff, who's our director of communications and coordinated basically everything. And then Kara Ray, who works in our communications division, and she's the one that made sure everybody got here on time. I had questions in front of me, all the things that actually the logistics part of this that makes this run. So
that's
Dina
no
and Kara
easy job either.
Dina and Kara did a great job, and I want to make sure that I shout out to them because they're not on.
And one of the things I'd like to say also is that I really like how you share all the podcasts on social media. You have an image, you got a cut of the audio from the interviews, and I think that adds a lot of value and helps reach that audience. And we just hope that people go back and, we're winding up season 1. It's been a lot of fun. We've learned a lot, but so much of the content of what we've had in season 1 is not time sensitive. So, I mean, you're going to learn more about people. And when you learn more about some of these people, make sure you tell them.
Absolutely.
That I heard you on the podcast.
Absolutely.
That would be cool because that's one of the things as a radio guy, it warms your heart like no other. Say, hey, I listened to you on the radio. And I think it'd be cool to say, hey, Kerri Winter, I listened to you on ThinkMHK Podcast.
Yeah, and I think I've had people who have come back to me and said that somebody must be listening because I've had several people say they heard me. So, and that makes me feel good too. So we're wrapping up season 1. So with 20 episodes, we will take a 2-month hiatus. We have already started our plans for season 2, and we will look to launch that sometime in May. So this gives you a great opportunity to go back, listen to the 20 episodes. It'll be about 10 hours worth of listening, but that's just a couple of road trips or a few miles around the track, and really listen to about some of the people that are in the chamber and our community leaders and the things that they believe in and some of the things that they've accomplished. And then come back in May. We already have, I think it's probably too early to announce our first guest, but we have
leave them hanging, huh?
But we have a really special guest for episode 1 of season 2 that I'm really excited about, and I know you all will be too. So thank you again for everything, for joining us in the ThinkMHK podcast from the Ad Astracast studios, and we will see you in 2 months. McCown Gordon Construction opened its Manhattan office in 2014, responding to business growth and client demand. The team is focused on engaging with communities in Manhattan and throughout the state of Kansas to bring projects to life. They are here to be your partner and view every project through a customer-centric, future-focused lens. Learn more at McCownGordon.com. Thanks for listening to this episode of ThinkMHK, a podcast produced by the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce. If you enjoyed the ThinkMHK podcast, we'd love for you to subscribe and share it out on your social media channels. Feel free to reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce.